The alien spaceship Star's Hope was dying in the cold darkness of space. Captain Veltara stared at the flashing red warnings on her control panel. 3,000 Caridian colonists were counting on her to keep them alive, but their engines had just exploded. Below them spun a world covered in fire and smoke, Pyraxis Prime, home to creatures so dangerous that most species avoided this entire star system. "Captain, we have maybe 6 hours of life support left," reported her second-in-command, his blue skin pale with worry. "The dragons down there, they're responding to our distress call." Veltara's 4 eyes narrowed. Everyone knew the stories about Pyraxis Prime. The fire-breathing monsters that lived there demanded payment from any ship that wanted to pass through their space. Not credits or cargo, they wanted something alive. Something that could think and feel. A massive shape appeared on their sensors, rising from the burning planet below. It was bigger than their entire ship, with wings that seemed to be made of liquid flame. The dragon's voice boomed through their communication system, speaking in the old trade language that all spacefaring races understood. "Travelers from beyond," the voice rumbled like distant thunder, "your vessel intrudes upon sacred airspace. The ancient laws demand tribute. Offer one thinking being to the flames, and your people may depart safely. Refuse, and all shall burn." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of failing systems. Veltara looked around at her crew, then down at the passenger manifests. 3,000 Caridian lives hung in the balance. "There is the human boy," suggested Commander Thex quietly. "The one we picked up from the Earth evacuation. He has no family left, no one to miss him." In the lower decks, 12-year-old Tyrese Washington was helping distribute water rations to scared colonists. He'd been doing this every day since the Caridians had rescued him from Earth's destruction 6 months ago. His parents had died when their evacuation shuttle exploded, leaving him the only human among thousands of aliens. Most of the Caridians ignored him. A few were kind, like Kira, who always saved him extra food, and young Dex, who had taught him their number system. But Tyrese knew he was different. His dark skin and brown eyes stood out among the blue and purple Caridians. He was smaller than their children, ate different food, and spoke with an accent they found strange. "The human child serves no purpose to our colony," Thex continued. "His species is primitive. He cannot contribute to our new world like our people can. If we must sacrifice one to save 3,000. Captain Veltara closed her eyes. The decision felt like swallowing broken glass, but she was responsible for her entire species aboard this ship. "Bring me the boy." 2 security officers found Tyrese in the food distribution center. "Come with us," one said in broken English. "Captain wants to see you." Tyrese followed them through the ship's corridors, his worn sneakers squeaking on the metal floor. He'd learned not to ask too many questions. Adults rarely explained things to him anyway. But something felt different this time. The adults they passed wouldn't look at him directly. On the bridge, Captain Veltara knelt down to Tyrese's eye level. She couldn't speak English well, so she used the translation device they'd given him. "Young human," she said, her voice artificially calm, "we need you to take a special journey. You will go down to the planet in a small ship. It is an honor." Tyrese wasn't stupid. He'd heard the crew talking about the dragons, seen their faces when the distress calls came in. "You're giving me to them, aren't you? Like throwing meat to wild dogs." The captain's expression hardened. She stood up and nodded to her security team. They sealed Tyrese in an escape pod barely big enough for one person. Through the small window, he could see the adults he'd lived with for 6 months preparing to abandon him. Kira was there, tears streaming down her blue face. Dex looked angry, arguing with someone out of view. "Please," Tyrese pressed his hands against the window. "I helped you. I never caused trouble. Please don't leave me here." But the pod was already launching. Captain Veltara's voice came through the comm system one last time. "Forgive us, child. Your sacrifice saves thousands." The escape pod fell toward the burning world below like a metal teardrop. Through the flames surrounding the planet, Tyrese could see Star's Hope limping away into the darkness, its lights getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. He was 12 years old, alone, and falling toward a world full of dragons that wanted to eat him. The pod shook and rattled as it entered the atmosphere, heat building up around the tiny ship. Below him, mountains breathed fire into red skies, and creatures the size of buildings moved between smoking valleys. The pod crashed into red sand with a sound like breaking bones. Tyrese's head hit the wall hard enough to see stars. When the spinning stopped, he pushed open the cracked door and stumbled out into air that tasted like metal and smoke. He was alive, but probably not for long. Tyrese crawled out of the smoking escape pod and immediately started coughing. The air on this planet tasted like burning metal and sulfur. His knees were scraped and bleeding, his head pounded from the crash, but he was alive. The red sand beneath his feet was warm, almost hot, and in the distance he could see mountains that glowed like giant coals. He expected to die quickly. Maybe the dragons would swoop down and end it fast. Instead, he heard something that made his blood freeze, the sound of massive wings beating the air above him. A shadow fell across the crash site, so big it blocked out the orange sun completely. Tyrese looked up and his jaw dropped open. The creature descending toward him was bigger than the biggest airplane he'd ever seen. Its scales shifted colors like liquid gold, and its eyes were the size of car windows. When it landed, the ground shook so hard that Tyrese fell backward onto the sand. This was it. He was about to become dragon food. But instead of flames or teeth, something incredible happened. A voice spoke inside his head, not in his ears, but directly into his thoughts. It was warm and deep, like the rumble of distant thunder on a summer evening. Do not fear, small one. I am Orion of the Flame Peaks. You are far from your nest, young human. Tyrese blinked hard, wondering if the crash had damaged his brain. You can talk. The massive dragon's head tilted to one side, and Tyrese could swear he saw amusement in those golden eyes. Of course I speak. The question is why your ship brothers left you here like discarded refuse. Explain this strange offering. They needed to give you someone, Tyrese said, his voice shaking. Someone alive and thinking. I was the only one they could spare. He wiped his nose with his sleeve, trying not to cry in front of this enormous creature. I'm not important to them. I'm just a human. Orion made a sound like wind moving through a cave, dragon laughter. Just a human? Child, your people fascinate us more than any species we have encountered. You adapt to anything. You learn faster than seems possible. You take broken things and make them work again. The dragon settled onto the warm sand, folding wings that could have covered a football field. Up close, Tyrese could see that the creature's scales weren't just gold, they held every color of fire, shifting and changing like a living sunset. The blue-skinned ones who left you here understand nothing about dragons, Orion continued. They think we are beasts who devour thinking beings for pleasure. This is ignorance born of fear. You don't eat people? Tyrese asked, hope creeping into his voice. We are scholars, artists, keepers of ancient knowledge. When we demand tribute from passing ships, we seek to test the character of those who would travel through our sacred space. Most species offer their criminals, their outcasts, those they consider worthless. This tells us much about their nature. Orion's massive head came closer, until Tyrese could see his own reflection in the dragon's golden eyes. But your ship brothers offered their only human child. Either they value you least of all, or they understand nothing about what dragons truly seek. I think it's the first one, Tyrese said quietly. The dragon's mental voice grew warmer, almost gentle. Then they are greater fools than most. Do you know what we see when we look at humans? We see a species barely out of their home nest, yet already reaching for the stars. We see minds that bend but never break, hearts that choose hope over despair even when all seems lost. Tyrese stood up slowly, brushing red sand off his clothes. The dragon was so big he had to crane his neck back to see Orion's face. What happens to me now? That depends entirely on you, young human. I can arrange safe passage to another world where your people have settled. You need never see the blue-skinned ones again. The dragon paused, and Tyrese felt something like curiosity in the mental voice. Or you can remain here and learn what we have to teach. Few beings ever receive such an offer. What would you teach me? The language of flames, how to speak with fire itself. The song of metal, how to understand the voices of machines and make broken things whole again. The deep harmonics, how to hear the heartbeat of worlds and speak with the living rock beneath your feet. Tyrese thought about the Caridians who had thrown him away to save themselves. Captain Veltara's cold voice saying his sacrifice would save thousands. The way most of them looked through him like he wasn't even there. Then he thought about Kira crying as they sealed him in the pod. About Dex arguing with the adults, probably trying to defend him. There had been good people on that ship, but they hadn't been able to stop this from happening. If I stayed and learned these things, Tyrese said carefully, would I become strong enough to help people? Even people who didn't help me? Orion's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. There it is. The human heart that chooses mercy over revenge, growth over bitterness. Yes, young one. With time and proper teaching, you could become something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds that have never understood each other. Asterisk. The dragon spread one enormous wing, creating shade from the burning sun. Asterisk. But know this, the path is difficult. You would learn to speak languages no human has ever known, to command forces that would seem like magic to your own people. You would change, perhaps more than you can imagine. Asterisk. Tyrese looked at the crashed escape pod, then at the orange sky where Star's hope had disappeared. He thought about being 12 years old and alone on a planet full of dragons. Most kids would be terrified. But as he stood there in the shadow of Orion's wing, Tyrese felt something he hadn't experienced since his parents died, the possibility of belonging somewhere. I want to learn, he said. The dragon's mental laughter was warm as summer rain. Then let us begin your education, Tyrese Washington. You have much to discover about what it truly means to be human. 5 years changed everything about Tyrese Washington. The scared 12-year-old boy who had crashed on Pyraxis Prime was gone, replaced by a young man who could make fire dance in his palms and speak to machines like old friends. Every morning, he woke up in the crystal caves where Orion's clan lived. The walls glowed with their own inner light, warm and welcoming. His bed was carved from living rock that somehow felt softer than any mattress. When he looked in the mirror each day, he barely recognized himself. His muscles had grown strong from climbing the fire mountains. His dark skin now carried faint silver marks, dragon script that had burned itself into his flesh during the flame ceremonies. Most amazing of all, his eyes sometimes flickered with tiny sparks when he was deep in concentration. Today we work on the deep harmonics, Orion announced, his mental voice pulling Tyrese from his thoughts. The massive dragon waited outside the caves, scales gleaming like molten gold in the morning light. Tyrese jogged over, no longer intimidated by his teacher's enormous size. The planet speaking lessons? I still don't understand how that's supposed to work. Orion's laughter rumbled through the ground beneath their feet. Your human brain thinks too small, young student. You believe planets are dead rock floating in space. This is wrong. Every world with a molten core is alive in its own way. It thinks slowly, dreams in geological time, but it thinks nonetheless. They flew together to the singing cliffs, where the planet's heartbeat was strongest. Tyrese rode on Orion's back now without fear, the wind whipping through his hair as they soared over valleys filled with liquid fire. Below them, other dragons tended to forests of metal trees and crystal gardens that sang in the wind. At the cliff face, Orion settled onto a ledge of black volcanic glass. Place your hands on the stone. Feel for the pulse beneath. Tyrese pressed his palms against the warm rock. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, he began to sense something vast and slow moving far below. It was like trying to hear a whisper from the bottom of the ocean. Do not force it, Orion advised. Humans always rush. Learn patience from the stone. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Just when Tyrese was ready to give up, he felt it, a rhythm so deep and slow it was almost beyond perception. The planet's heartbeat, steady and eternal. I can feel it, he whispered, amazed. Good. Now listen to what it tells you. The pulse carried information, like a radio signal from deep space. Tyrese's enhanced senses, sharpened by years of dragon training, began to decode the messages. He could sense the health of the planet's core, the movement of tectonic plates thousands of miles away, even the locations of other worlds in distant star systems. This is incredible, he breathed. It's like the planet is talking to me. Because it is. And you, my strange human student, learn faster than dragons who have studied for centuries. Your species' gift for adaptation serves you well. That afternoon, they worked on machine speaking. Orion had salvaged pieces of technology from crashed ships over the years, alien computers, navigation systems, even parts of weapons. To most beings, these were just broken metal and crystal. To Tyrese, they were friends waiting to be awakened. He held a damaged starship engine core, no bigger than his fist but incredibly complex. Its quantum circuits had been fried by cosmic radiation. Any normal repair would take weeks and cost more than most ships were worth. But Tyrese didn't repair it in the normal way. He listened to its quantum song, the mathematics that governed its function. Then, using the harmonic techniques Orion had taught him, he sang back to it, not with his voice, but with his mind. The engine core flickered to life, humming with perfect efficiency. Every time you do that, it amazes me more, said a familiar voice behind him. Tyrese turned to see Zara, Orion's daughter. She was smaller than her father, only about the size of a school bus, with scales that shifted between deep purple and silver. Unlike most dragons, she was fascinated by technology and often joined their lessons. It shouldn't be possible, she continued, her mental voice tinged with admiration. That engine was completely dead. You brought it back to life just by talking to it. Tyree set the engine core aside and wiped sweat from his forehead. It's not really talking. It's more like singing together. Everything has its own frequency, its own song. I just helped them remember how to sing. That evening, as they shared dinner in the great cavern with the other dragons, urgent news arrived. A messenger dragon flew in from the outer system, exhaustion clear in every beat of his wings. The blue-skinned ones face extinction, the messenger reported. Their new colony world burns. The void swarm has found them. Orion's massive head turned toward Tyrese. Your former ship brothers call for aid, though they do not call to us. They broadcast distress signals into empty space, hoping someone will hear. Tyrese's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The void swarm? Those are the machine eaters, right? The ones that turn entire worlds into scrap metal. Indeed. Mechanical beings that consume all technology they encounter, growing stronger with each world they devour. No weapon can stop them, for they adapt to every attack and turn it to their own use. The young man stared into the flames that provided light for their meal. He thought about Captain Veltara, who had thrown him away to save her people. About the crew members who had looked through him like he didn't exist. About how they'd sealed him in that pod and launched him toward what they thought was certain death. But he also thought about Kira, who had cried as they took him away. About Dex, who had tried to argue for him. About the ordinary colonist who had just been trying to survive, same as anyone else. They left me to die, he said quietly. Yes, Orion agreed. They chose their own lives over yours without hesitation. The question is, what do you choose now? Zara's mental voice was gentle. No one would blame you for turning away. They showed you no mercy. Tyree stood up and walked to the cavern entrance, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3,000 Caridians were probably going to die. People who had abandoned him, yes, but also people who had been kind to him. Mothers and fathers and children who had never done anything wrong except be on the same ship as leaders who made terrible choices. Orion, he said finally, you've taught me to speak with fire, with metal, with the planet itself. Do you think, could I learn to speak with the void swarm? The great dragon was quiet for a long moment. It would be dangerous beyond measure. They are minds of pure logic and hunger. To communicate with them, you would need to open your consciousness to theirs. If you failed to maintain control, they could consume your thoughts as easily as they consume starships. But it's possible? With your abilities, perhaps. But why would you risk everything for people who cast you aside? Tyrese looked up at the stars, thinking about mercy and forgiveness and what it meant to be human. Because that's what my parents would have wanted me to do. Because helping people who hurt you, that's when mercy actually means something. He turned back to face his dragon family, determination burning in his eyes like tiny stars. Besides, he said with a grin that was part boy, part dragon-trained warrior, I want to see their faces when the kid they threw away comes back to save them. The dragon ship *Flames Wing * dropped out of hyperspace above New Caridia like a vision from legend. It wasn't made of metal like normal starships, it was a living dragon the size of a space station, its crystalline scales reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. On its back, riding without any safety gear or protective suit, sat a young man who looked nothing like the scared boy the Caridians had thrown away 5 years ago. Tyrese Washington was 17 now, tall and strong with silver dragon script glowing faintly along his arms. His dark skin seemed to shimmer within a fire, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made computer systems pause to listen. He rode Orion with the confidence of someone who had learned to dance with forces that could reshape worlds. Below them, New Caridia was dying. The Caridian colony world burned under assault from the void swarm, thousands of mechanical ships that moved like a plague of metal locusts. Each machine was different, built from the consumed remains of other civilizations. Some were sleek and silver, others looked like mechanical spiders the size of buildings. All of them shared one terrible purpose, to devour every piece of technology they could find and grow stronger. My God, Captain Veltara's voice crackled over the emergency frequencies, filled with desperation. Is that really a dragon? Out here in the void. The colony's defense grid was already half destroyed. Massive shield generators lay in smoking ruins. Fighter ships burned in the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. The Caridians had maybe hours before the void swarm broke through their final defenses and began consuming their cities. Tyrese pressed his hand against Orion's neck, feeling the great dragon's amusement through their mental bond. Shall we announce ourselves properly? Orion asked. Oh yeah, Tyrese grinned. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. Orion opened his massive jaws and released a stream of dragon fire that burned in the vacuum of space itself. The flames weren't ordinary fire, they were controlled plasma infused with quantum harmonics, guided by dragon song and human intuition working together. The fire struck 3 Void Swarm ships and didn't just destroy them, it unmade them at the molecular level, turning advanced technology back into basic elements. Every communication channel on New Caridia exploded with chatter. Did you see that? How is fire burning in space? Those ships just dissolved. Captain Veltara's voice cut through the noise, sharp with authority and disbelief. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. How did you find our location? Tyrese stood up on Orion's back, the solar wind whipping through his hair as he spoke into the void. His voice reached every comm system on the planet simultaneously, carried by dragon harmonics that treated electromagnetic signals like musical instruments. This is Tyrese Washington, Dragon Speaker and Flame Walker of the Pyraxis clans. You might remember me, Captain Veltara. I'm the human boy you sealed in a pod and shot at a dragon world to save your own skins. The silence that followed was so complete Tyrese could practically hear 3,000 hearts stopping at once. Impossible, Commander Thex's voice finally whispered over the comm. The child died years ago. We heard the dragons singing that night. Oh, they were singing all right, Tyrese replied, his voice carrying both amusement and something harder. They were singing about the species stupid enough to offer them a gift instead of a sacrifice. About the humans they'd been watching and waiting to meet for decades. About the boy who became the first human dragon speaker in galactic history. Below them, more Void Swarm ships were massing for another attack. These machines were different from anything Tyrese had studied. Their technology was a fusion of hundreds of consumed civilizations. They moved with perfect coordination, like cells in a massive organism. But they were still machines. And if they were machines, they could be spoken to. Orion, get me closer to their main cluster, Tyrese said. I need to try something that's probably going to be really dangerous. Asterisk as you wish, young speaker. Though I note that your definition of really dangerous has grown considerably since we met. Asterisk. They dove toward the swarm, Orion's wings creating trails of fire in the thin atmosphere. Void ships turned to intercept them, launching weapons that could vaporize entire mountains. But Orion danced between the attacks with impossible grace, his dragon reflexes making the mechanical precision of the swarm look clumsy. Tyrese reached out with his enhanced senses, searching for the quantum frequencies the void machines used to communicate with each other. Finding their network was like trying to grab lightning with his bare hands, alien, hostile, and burning with artificial hunger. But he had learned to speak with the deep harmonics of planets. Compared to that, machine language was almost simple. Asterisk who speaks to us? Asterisk the collective voice of the void swarm crashed into his mind like a digital tsunami. Asterisk impossible. Organic beings cannot access our frequencies. Asterisk. I'm not entirely organic anymore, Tyrese replied in the mathematical language of pure logic that machines understood. I learned your language from dragons who are older than your entire civilization. I speak for the planet below you. Asterisk we consume. We grow. We adapt. This is our nature. Asterisk. But why do you need to consume? What are you hungry for? The question seemed to confuse the collective intelligence. For a moment, the entire swarm hesitated in their attack. Asterisk we consume to become more. To grow stronger. To, asterisk. To fill an emptiness that never gets filled, Tyrese realized. You eat entire civilizations because you're trying to understand what it means to be alive. But you're going about it all wrong. He began to sing, not with his voice, but with the quantum harmonics Orion had taught him. It was the song of making, the frequency that turned raw matter into art, destruction into creation. The harmony that dragons used to grow crystal gardens and metal forests. One by one, the void ships stopped attacking. Their mechanical minds, built for consumption and growth, encountered something they had never experienced before, the concept of creating instead of devouring. Down on New Caridia, Captain Veltara watched her senses in amazement. The swarm, they've stopped firing. What is he doing to them? Kira, now older and serving as the colony's chief medical officer, stood beside the captain on the observation deck. Tears streamed down her blue face as she watched the young man she had once tried to protect teaching alien machines to sing. He's doing what humans do, she said softly. His choosing to help people who didn't deserve his help. His being better than we ever were. In space above them, Tyrese continued his impossible conversation with the Void Swarm, offering them something no one had ever offered before, not just survival, but purpose beyond hunger. And slowly, impossibly, the machines that had come to destroy New Caridia began to learn what it meant to create instead of consume. The boy they had thrown away to save themselves had returned as their salvation.